So glad you could join me today for PJ's Storytime. I have another great tale I'd like to share with you. Once upon a time, as they say in Italy, there lived a young man named Gigi with his mother and sister, whose name was Maria. They were very poor, and one day Gigi decided to go out into the world to seek his fortune. So he said farewell to his mother and sister, and off he went. And when he had left the town, but a short distance behind, he overtook an old woman carrying a heavy oil jar. Gigi had a kind heart. "Give it to me," said he. He swung it to his shoulder and carried it up the hill and set it in her kitchen. "Thank you, my fine young man," said the old woman. "I have little to offer to you, but will you not sit and rest a while?" So Gigi sat and rested, and while he sat in the chimney corner, he played with the dog and the cat that lay before the fire. He told the old woman of how he had started out to seek his fortune, and as he was leaving, lest he be lonely on his journey, she gave to him the dog and the cat for company. And she went to the cupboard and brought out a ring, and with these words she gave it to him. "Take this, and when you want anything very much, wear it on your finger and turn it about, and your want shall be filled." Gigi thanked her, put the ring in his pocket, and set off, the cat and the dog running on before. When they had gone several miles, it began to grow dark, and Gigi looked for a place to sleep. There were no houses near, but there was a thick woods. Gigi and the cat and the dog lay down and tried to sleep, but Gigi was so hungry that he could not sleep. "I wish that a table were set before me with a fine supper on it," thought Gigi. His fingers touched the ring in his pocket. He slipped it on his finger and began turning it around. Suddenly, in the dim light, he saw before him a table spread with a fine cloth and laid with silver, and there was a hot smoking roast duck, and fruit and wine. The dog and the cat sat up and sniffed their noses in the air. And then Gigi drew up to the table, and with him the dog and the cat. And such a feast as they all had. "The old woman must have been a fairy," he said to himself, and he began to think of all the things for which he might wish. But he decided not to wish for anything more until he had thought the matter over well. And he lay down and slept. He awoke early the next morning and set off down the road with the dog and the cat at his heels. Up and down hills and through the woods he went with the two good friends for company, and as he went he sang a merry tune. At last he came to a fine palace, and in an upper window he saw a beautiful maiden. Gigi gazed and gazed at her. "Oh, I could look at her all day long," he said, "but she would never look at me, poor as I am. I wish," and at the word wish, he thought of the ring in his pocket, and on his finger he slipped it and said, "I want a fine palace on the opposite side of the road." And suddenly he found himself standing in the window of a wonderful palace, and looking across, he saw the beautiful maiden smiling at him. And then he wished for fine clothes and servants, meat and drink, and all good things. The next morning the girl's father and mother came to call, and soon he returned their call. He was presented to the girl, whose name was Malarda, and before the day was over, Gigi had asked her hand in marriage. Her parents thought that Gigi must be a great prince, and gladly gave consent to the marriage. All went well until the eve of the wedding day, when Malarda and her father and mother paid a visit to Gigi, and while they talked together, Malarda asked Gigi how it was that his fine palace had sprung up in so short a time. And Gigi, always kind and simple, told of his journey into the world to seek his fortune, of the old woman and her gift of the ring, and all that had happened. "And do you always wear the ring on your finger?" asked Malarda. "Always," answered Gigi, "whether I am waking or sleeping." Now Gigi had been hunting that day and was very tired, and as soon as Malarda and her father and mother had taken their departure, he lay down on a couch and fell fast asleep. Malarda stayed behind a moment, and when peeping through a crack in the door, she saw that Gigi was asleep, she stole in and drew the ring from his finger. She hurried home, and once there, she put the ring on her own finger, turned it, and said, "I wish Gigi's palace to be removed and set upon the highest peak of yonder mountain range." When Gigi awoke the next morning, he was shivering and shaking with the cold, and great was his surprise to find his ring missing, and himself and his palace on the mountaintop. Beneath him could be seen only the ice and snow, but worst of all was the thought that this beautiful Malarda had brought this about. For only one person knew of the ring, and that was Malarda. It was impossible to go down the mountain. It was very steep, and there was no path. The dog and the cat were sorely troubled about their master's misfortune. They said, "We can walk where a man cannot. Give us a day, and we will try to get back your ring." Gigi fed them well, and then he opened the door for them, and the dog and the cat set off. They slipped and slid and crawled and fell and went on again and never stopped till they came to the palace of Malarda. They managed to slip in when the door was opened, and while the dog kept guard below, the cat crept upstairs to the door of Malarda's room. But the door was shut. The cat sat down and thought and thought. As she sat thinking, a little mouse came running across the floor. "Squeak, squeak," said the little mouse. She was so frightened when she saw the cat. The cat put out her paw and caught her. The mouse begged so piteously for her life, telling of her little family, which would be left with no mother, that the cat was sorry for her and said, "Very well, I will spare your life, but in return you must gnaw a hole in the door, for I must go inside." The little mouse began to gnaw. She gnawed and she gnawed and she gnawed, until she could gnaw no more. But still the hole was so small that she couldn't even get in herself, let alone the cat. The mouse sat and thought for a minute, and then she said, "Wait, and you shall see what you shall see." Away she ran, and when she came back, she brought her youngest, a tiny mouse. A word from his mother, and in through the hole went the tiny mouse. In a minute, back came the tiny mouse. "There is no ring on the lady's finger," he said. "Then the lady has it in her mouth," said the mouse. "Go in again, creep up on her bed, tickle her nose with your tail. She will open her mouth, and then the ring will drop out." In another minute, Tiny Mouse came bringing back the ring. The mice hurried away to their holes, and as soon as the door was opened, the cat and the dog ran out, and away they went to the top of the mountain. It was morning when they reached the palace, and their master was waiting in the door for them. Gigi put the ring on his finger, turned it, and said, "I wish my palace was again by the roadside." And the palace of the wicked Malarda was here on top of the mountain, amidst the snow and ice. All in a minute it was done. When a year had passed, Gigi went home to see his mother and sister. His friends, the dog and the cat, journeyed with him. He stopped on the way to see the old woman who had given him the ring. But she was not there, and no one knew where she had gone. As for his mother and his sister, they were more glad to see him than words can tell, and a fine welcome they gave him. And Gigi and his mother and his sister Maria, and the dog and the cat lived together in peace and content for many a long year, and they may still be living, for all that I know. The end.